Okay, so I'm going to drop two of these today, because I think, although I haven't watched it back, I think the last one was rambling and incoherent and basically shit, and I wasn't really making much sense. That's At least that's the way it sounded when I was speaking. Um, I've since had something to eat, so not only am I more lucid, uh, my stomach is no longer rumbling. Right. So anyway, after I did that last one like an hour ago, um, I got thinking about other stuff and or related stuff or stuff I touched upon briefly, and I think I started talking about before, but went off on tangents, and I'm actually waiting for the door to go, so it's probably going to interrupt this, but I went off on tangents and loads of non sequiturs, and I didn't really make any um, cogent points, salient points. But anyway, so here's what I was thinking, right? I was thinking in terms of what I've been hearing a lot of about the United Kingdom and our so-called democracy, where we have where we have inalienable sorry inalienable rights, not just civil rights or human rights, but we have inalienable rights, which actually isn't a thing unless you've got a constitution written into law like in the US. But most people view their right to express themselves and to speak, right? Because that's how humans communicate. We use speech, words, whether we say them or we write them. That's how we communicate. And most people would see, if you ask most people and you said, well, is your right to talk or to speak or to write, is that an inalienable, inarguable right that you should have? Most people would say, well, yeah, of course it is. It's you know, it's why the Magna Carta was written, isn't it? you know, um, it's why we made it out of caves in the first place, to have those freedoms, and then out of bondage through the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages, and from the brutality of you know the monarchies and the church, and all through history, slavery and the Roman conquest, the Norman conquest. These are inarguable rights uh, in 2025, as most people would see it, even if you don't know anything about history. And I know a bit. I'm not an expert. I ain't no David Starkey. but but I was thinking, with regards to rights and the regards to our country, which is a democracy, right? And you can thank the ancient Greeks. You can thank the ancient Greeks for the word and the principles of democracy. Um, they I wouldn't say they created it. Um, they might have discovered it. It's a bit like politics. The ancient Greeks didn't didn't create politics, right? They discovered politics, in as much that politics are innate. It's how humans um, interact with each other. Politicking, sexual politics, geopolitics, office politics, macro politics, the politics of dancing. Everything is political. Every interaction we have, there's an aspect of politicking. It's just how, you know, people tend to think of it as The word politic it's Machiavellian. It seems to imply or infer you know um it has sinister undertones, as if it's it implies something underhand or sneaky. But no, I mean, politics is a natural human default. And so the ancient Greeks discovered this. They discovered that it's innate. And likewise, that is on the fundamentals of which democracies were built. And but here's the thing with democracies, right? And this is quite germane to what I was talking about earlier, because the state of the UK right now, I was thinking that ostensibly a democracy is only a democracy until the majority decide that it isn't. Now, that might sound self-contradicting, right? Or is that an oxymoron? That's a good question, right? Is that a self-contradictory maxim or turn of phrase? Well, the thing is, it isn't, because if you think about it, democracy, it's not a default setting. It's something. It's consensual. It's an agreement between large amounts of people to abide by a principle that they can agree on. The majority can agree on. We're talking generally. All right? So if you were to say that, or if your point of view, if your point of view was that, say, the only good authority is when you're the authority, right? That's kind of a totalitarian viewpoint. But it's also self-contradictory, or sort of an oxymoron. And so does that mean that authority is a good thing, but only if you're calling the shots? You have to think about that for a while, because maybe I mean, most people trust themselves, right? We have an innate self-trust, i.e., we believe that our opinions are pretty safe. They're safe, they're sound, because we own them. They're ours. They come from us. But it doesn't mean that anybody out there is going to agree with your opinion. Maybe a lot of people do, but it's not a guarantee. So who's to say that one self-professed authoritarian can't be right, or can they always be wrong? But maybe sometimes they're right. If you think of right and wrong as what is best, because there's nothing that's perfect ever when you're dealing with imperfect animals, or hierarchies. We live in hierarchies. We're animals, right? Super apes. And hierarchies are, they're just unavoidable. You can't govern without a hierarchy. You can't coexist without a hierarchy. It's just unfeasible. I mean, people have tried it, but at the end, it always reverts to a hierarchy. And a hierarchy inevitably means an apex with somebody at the top, and a pyramid of power. And I think I was talking about that before. in a sort of crude way that I do. But anyway, um, yeah. So the democracy in the United Kingdom, it's coming under attack from a lot of angles, not just not just the obvious front-on assaults on our speech privileges and our communication privileges, but it's coming under attack from a whole host of different angles right now. Democracy in the United Kingdom, and it's some of them are front on, some of them are stealth attacks, and they're basically attacks on our way of life and our democracy, but they're Trojan horse attacks. So the the PTB, the powers that be, say that, for example, Online Safety Act. They say, well, hang on a minute. This act is to protect minors, youths, and children from harmful internet content. Now, most of us would agree that the most harmful internet content is nothing we want children or minors or even youth sometimes to be viewing, because basically it's probably not good for them. You know, especially if they don't have a good moral grounding in the first place, or they're susceptible to influence, very susceptible, and we don't want those kind of underage people viewing the worst kind of mal content. Really, it's probably a good thing, but the problem is in the execution, right? So in the execution of preventing harmful content being viewed by vulnerable or influenceable youth, then what we do is we find that that's also a byproduct of that is censorship for everybody, and by that I mean um, mature adults. And so now we find that mature adults are going to get censored, and they're going to just interpret the Online Safety Act to mean, well, we'll censor this because we think it's harmful. It doesn't matter to who. I mean, it's harmful to anyone. So then the moral authority, i.e., the unelected moral authority, then decide, a panel somewhere, decides what is harmful and what you haven't got the right to look at. To me, that sounds, well, it's Orwellian, isn't it? But I mean, it doesn't sound like a democracy anymore. It sounds like a dictatorship. Once they dictate what you can look at and what you can say, then the next boundary is they dictate what you're thinking, or even what you're saying behind your own four walls in your own homes. And that's already happened, by the way, and where I live in Scotland. Uh, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, I was thinking about those things, and of course, I was going to go on to another topic entirely today, but I got sidetracked again. Um, I got sidetracked into a rambling spiel on other things. But I think what I was actually wanting to talk about wasn't anything to do with gender politics, or what I was actually wanting to talk about was why is the world the way it is now? Why, in this country that I live in, why is it gone? How has it gone the way it is? And what I'm talking about in this specific case is, why do we have a societal setting that seems to be less free, more restricted, more restrictive than it has been in the last 50 years. Why have we allowed this? Why have we elected governments that you know that are pulling for this? Why have we let it happen? Is the kind of um, psychological masochism? Is it? Did we just get too comfortable? Um, is life too predictable now? I.e., boring. We need to shake it up. Um, have we been taught to loathe ourselves? Well, when you consider that everybody who uses any kind of electronic profile to promote themselves, basically, they added out all the bad stuff. Or maybe when we look at ourselves through a lens, we don't always like what we see. I'm looking at a lens right now, and I'm looking at my face staring right back at me. Do I like it? Um, Not so much the last 10 years. It was all right before that. Um, then, um, then time happened, and it's not so much fun anymore. But that's just me being glib. Anybody would probably feel the same thing. So that's why people modify themselves, edit out all the bad parts so they appear like perfection. Um, that's why people do that, because they don't like what's looking back at them in the mirror, or they wanna they wanna find ways to sculpt it or improve it. But those improvements